everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today again for another podcast session. I've got joining me today Mark from Therefore. Mark brings more than 20 years worth of experience in specifically document management and I guess workflow processes, and then a lot more experience in in business processes altogether. Thanks for joining us today, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the invite.
Today we're going to cover the topic of specifically focusing on HR and HR processes and documents within HR, GDPR, compliance, efficiency, all these lovely things. So I guess a good place to perhaps start is, we're going to cover off obviously the employee life cycle and the ecosystem that exists around it. So I guess a good place to start is perhaps the challenges that a lot of customers face in this area. What's the biggest threat to HR, and how does essentially a document management system, support in that area?
Well, I think, if you take a step back, every company wants to employ good staff, well-qualified staff, and make sure that they retain them. So employee retention is equally important. Most companies are now using an online platform to filter out CVs and present them with potential candidates. So the first step, once you get those CVs, is to offer them to the recruiting manager, and then for that manager to have the option to accept or decline that at that stage. So that is the first point of making sure, we've got 50 CVs or 100 CVs, we've whittled it down to 10, we want to interview those 10. What typically happens then is somebody sits there laboriously creating 10 emails, sending them out to the selected candidates, waiting for their response. And of course, with a platform like Therefore, you can automate that part of the process so that when the CVs come in, the approval process is in place automatically. The CVs can come through to the manager. They can do the approve, reject. Mm-hmm. Once they've approved them, an automated message can be sent out to the individual candidates that have been selected, offering a particular set of dates for them to come to an interview. And then you may also want to provide them with some sort of ability to upload supporting information for their application. So that might include a copy of their driving licence, their proof of identity, their current CV, and any other references they have from previous employers. And of course, if they're attaching those to email, sometimes they can be large files. Then the onus is on the recruiting manager to take those attachments off of an email, put them somewhere securely, and then manage that in the future. And what I mean by that, if you take, say, GDPR into the equation, if you imagine putting those documents into a folder, are you going to remember to go and delete them if the candidate is unsuccessful?
No, I imagine a lot of people will say yes, they would, but the reality is that isn't going to happen.
It doesn't happen.
You move on to something else, and other tasks get in the way, and then 6 months later, it's still sat there.
Correct.
Is the reality of the situation, if we're honest with ourselves.
So if that's the case, which we know is the reality, then there's lots of businesses that are in breach of the regulations that exist there.
Yeah, which come with heavy fines.
Completely.
GDPR has been around for a while now, and I think a lot of people kind of put it as a second thought. Oh, well, it'll never impact us really. When it came about, it was a big concern, and so it should have been. And then people, I think, started to realize, well, it's only really the big banks and the big businesses, not realizing that no, this stuff can come around to you and potentially will if you're not compliant with it. So, I think it's something that it's very easy to lose focus on, because it's more than 10 years now, or around 10 years, I think, GDPR.
It's a good while,
Yeah, so I think people have kind of lost focus on the importance of it. Maybe not those in HR, but maybe those in other departments.
Yeah, I completely agree. And of course, again, if you use a platform like Therefore, then those documents can be stored securely against that individual candidate until such time as the candidate is either successful or unsuccessful. If they're unsuccessful, the system can automatically delete those documents at the appropriate time. And if the candidate is successful and you want to retain the documents or the information they've provided, that can be automatically migrated to what becomes their employee record. In addition to that, so as you move forward and you've gone through the recruiting process and you've scored those candidates and you've decided who you're going to recruit, you may want additional information from them, like bank details, next of kin, emergency contact numbers, etc., which all then fill out that employee record. Some of that data will need to go into third-party systems like payroll systems, but often those other systems don't have the ability to store documents or have particularly good workflow, if any workflow. And so once you have an employee and you want to make sure that now their onboarding is correct, you're training them on the necessary processes within your business. You want to get them up and running in their job role as quickly as possible because you need them, otherwise you wouldn't have looked for them in the first place. And then, of course, it's that long-term objective of keeping that employee in the business and giving them career progression. So you now want to look at things like performance reviews, training, and all those other things that go into developing that employee, giving them opportunity to move through your business and become a more senior member of staff over time.
Yeah, and I mean, just obviously rewinding a little bit there, as to, I guess, that earlier stage in that employee life cycle. I guess what's quite key to point out there is it's a lot of that is kind of self-service elements. It's removing the pressure on the HR manager or the recruiter to manually have those touch points. And what essentially therefore he's going to do is provide an automated process to capture and grab that information from the candidate, store it within the system. There's obviously going to be some elements that, for example, if it's stored within therefore and you want to migrate it to a different system and there's not an integration there, then maybe there's a manual touch point. So it's not necessarily that it can obviously remove, I think, the majority of that manual process, but even where there isn't, the majority of it is becoming an automated process, and the system is gathering that information from different touch points based on the workflow that's been built into it. And I think in terms of the I think sometimes that's overlooked as the possible efficiency that can be achieved. It's not just a system to store documents in, but it's all the processes around it where it's gathering information, it's doing things, it's pulling that information, putting it into another product or another system, and it's removing that manual touch point that is necessary.
It is, and we routinely build into the system, reminders and notifications to prompt people to do things at appropriate times, because without that sort of automation, things get forgotten or missed, and then they could be important things. I can remember going back many years in working in a company where we were supposed to have annual performance reviews, and quite frequently no review happened. And so, as an employee, you then become quite dissatisfied because you're not getting, you're kind of sitting there thinking, well, how important am I if I'm not being given the opportunity to discuss my performance?
Well, you don't get the opportunity to get feedback on how you can improve. There's obviously not necessarily an opportunity then to do a performance review, and that come with whatever benefits might come about afterwards.
Correct.
So and that a lot of time that can just be due to a lack of a process. The person doesn't know that needs to occur, and it's a breakdown in that internal process. I mean, I think it's there's so much opportunity, specifically in HR, for efficiency improvements, not just the compliance element and the risk of GDPR and data not being removed in an adequate amount of time. But I think what you touched on was quite interesting there as well, is this system can be configured not just for that early stage in the life cycle, not just the induction process perhaps for a new employee, which therefore can be configured to do that, to help deliver certain documents, training materials, certain things, I guess, as that employee's onboarded, let's say, into the company. But then the continual development as it stores information against their employee file, and correct me here if I'm saying anything incorrect, but how it stores that and how that then develops with the employee as they, as you say, go on from position to position year after year within the company.
Yeah, and you've got all that historic information for as long as you need it on that employee. Yeah,
so there's a full auditable paper trail. You can dig into it, and there's different documents, different elements.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I guess then going along that same process, the employee life cycle, on from the recruitment process, on from, the self-service element whilst they're in the business, to then eventually them leaving the company and the data perhaps going with them. How does, again, therefore support in that area, and what are the key features that are worth mentioning? Sorry.
So you've got a number of different elements there. So, from the point of view of the employee leaving the business, that could be through redundancy, dismissal, retirement. There's a number of reasons why individuals leave a business.
Yeah.
In all instances, at some point, you will need to delete or remove that documentation from your system.
Yeah.
And quite often you want to have some sort of evidence that you've done that. And so we can create a certificate of destruction for the documents that have been deleted from the system.
Okay.
But equally, if an employee leaves and they want copies of all their performance reviews, or maybe copies of references, or whatever type of document that you might be retaining against their record, then it's very easy to retrieve that information and export it in a way that you can then easily share it with that individual to take with them.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So I guess what control mechanisms are there for accessibility to certain documents when it comes to HR? I mean, I imagine we want to prevent certain employees from being able to access pay slips, or employee files, or any personal data, or specifically sensitive data that perhaps others shouldn't access. What control mechanisms are there, or can I, as a user, log in and access a director's information or another employee's information? What's kind of set up, and how does that work?
You're absolutely on the nail there, that security is really, really important, because you can't afford for employees to be able to access other employees' information unless they're working in the HR department. And even within the HR department, you need to make sure that certain information is only accessible by senior HR managers. So the good thing about therefore is we set the system up with user accounts, roles and permissions, and they will dictate what areas of the system they can see, and what they can retrieve, what they can view, what they can print or download. If we need even more granular control, we can take that right down to an individual document level. So for example, we could say, Mark works in the manufacturing department, and he looks after a team of 10 people, and he is only allowed to see the last performance review for the members of his team, but he cannot see any other information related to that employee. So we've got great control there. If we need further control, we can actually put document sensitivity elements into the record. So we could say, this is a public document, this is a private document, this is a confidential document, as an example, and that will drive further security and permissions to make sure that absolutely it's tightly controlled.
Yeah, fine. Okay, that's brilliant. I guess just continue along, train of thought that's popping in my mind right now. I guess many questions we've had from businesses we've worked with, and campaigns we've run, and events we've hosted. There's often the talk, at least there has been over the last 12 to 24 months, around AI, and how AI is going to revolutionize, every piece of technology and every process. How do you, I guess, what is and you don't necessarily need to give away any trademark secrets or any developments that are coming about through therefore, but what can you say in terms of the direction this technology is heading, and how AI is going to be able to help support this department, specifically HR, and their processes?
Okay. Well, I think where we are today is that we have some very mature product in therefore. It's been available for more than 20 years. It is designed in such a way that it can be configured by competent IT people within the business. And I think one area where we will see over time, not tomorrow, but over time, will be that AI will become more accessible to help people in the department at departmental level, so maybe the HR manager, to design new workflows for themselves rather than being reliant on their IT department.
Yeah.
So I think that will be a natural progression. That's a great thing, because it means that the platform will be more widely used by different departments. So, therefore isn't only a product for HR, it can be used right across the business in finance, legal, whichever department that you're running.
I think that's absolutely worth noting. It's very easy to become isolated, at least in these conversations where it's fixed on a certain department. But it absolutely, these processes and the functionality built into this can absolutely be used across lots of different departments. To anywhere where there is, I guess, a document that is going through a process or that needs to be stored or retrieved. Absolutely, a product like this can support in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. And just pick up on one thing there, just to state that, whilst a lot of the stuff we do involves a document isn't necessarily just a Word file or an Excel spreadsheet. We would class an email as a document in the context of being able to manage files, but actually we can store data which has no document attached. So an example of that might be a holiday request from an employee might come through as a digital form. So there's no document attached. They just fill in a form on their mobile phone, submit their holiday request. That can go through whatever approval process it needs to go through and can be recorded against their HR record. And they will receive automated notifications to say whether their holiday has been approved or not. So whilst, as I say, a lot of what we do does involve documents, it doesn't have to just be a document.
Yeah, I guess it's any data in different formats, different forms, or different types. Whether, as you say, a form or a Word document or an Excel, or it could be a range of different things.
Yeah. But to get back to your earlier point about AI,
of course,
I think we are already heavily invested in doing integrations with Microsoft Copilot.
Yeah.
And I think what you will see there is for us to have the ability within the product to interrogate your document repository and also generate documents based on that content that already exists. So, an example in HR may be that you need a new employee for a particular role and that you've had similar roles in the past, and you go off and ask the system to generate a job description for this role based on previously generated or previously stored information.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really interesting kind of development and where things are likely to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I say, we've had this question asked of us quite a few times around AI and how it's going to perhaps support specifically with HR. So it's great to know that there's stuff coming and there's lots of things to look forward to. I've obviously got some information I can take back to those that have asked that question previously. Yeah, it's exciting stuff, and I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing where this industry goes, and specifically where Therefore goes, and looking forward to working with you specifically, and therefore obviously more on other campaigns and projects. If you'd obviously like to learn more about Therefore specifically, reach out to us. Happy to have a conversation, introduce you to the lovely Mark, and look out for any of the upcoming webinars covering specific topics, whether it be AP, HR, contract management, manufacturing processes, whatever it might be. We look forward to seeing you there. Have a lovely day. Take care.
Thank you.
Cheers, Mark.